She was convinced she had no brain, no nerves, no chest, and no stomach. She refused to eat, reasoning that since she was condemned to eternal damnation, coming up next is a case that sounds like a plot from a comedy movie, I guess. What if your own body could get you drunk without you ever touching a drop of alcohol? Have you ever heard someone with a truly unique accent and wondered where it came from? Now, imagine that unique accent coming from you overnight after a brain surgery. Now, imagine truly believing you have disappeared. This is walking corpse syndrome, also known as Cotard's delusion. Liverpool Hospital has just introduced a breakthrough technology called MRI guided cryoablation, minimally invasive procedure that freezes tumors from the inside out. How about that? So settle in, because this episode is going to take you on a journey through the most incredible medical paradoxes you've ever heard. Welcome back, Paradox Nation, the podcast where we dive deep into the mysteries and paradoxes of the human condition and explore the stories that defy explanation. And as always, looking for a paradox in business, technology, and everyday events, and this time in medicine. I'm your host, Pat, and today we're stepping into the strange and sometimes terrifying world where your own body becomes a stranger. I went online and started searching for the most bizarre, unusual human conditions, as always out of pure and old-fashioned curiosity. Forget science fiction. These are real people living with conditions so rare and bizarre, they sound like they've been pulled straight from an episode of House MD or A Nightmare. We're talking about people who believe they're dead, whose muscles turn into bone, who get drunk on their own digestive system, or who suddenly wake up speaking in a different accent. These aren't just medical oddities. They're profound human stories of resilience, confusion, and the sheer mind-boggling complexity of our own biology. So settle in, because this episode is going to take you on a journey through the most incredible medical paradoxes you've ever heard, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Let's kick off things with a condition that sounds like something out of medieval legend, but is terrifyingly true and real. Imagine your muscles, tendons, and ligaments, the soft, flexible parts that allow you to move, gradually, relentlessly turning into solid bone. It's called Stone Man Syndrome, or medically fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva. I'm not sure if I said that correctly. Anyway, FOP is the shortcut. It literally creates a second skeleton, fusing joints and slowly imprisoning people within their own bodies. The most famous and tragically poignant example of this is Harry Raymond Eastlack Jr., born in 1933. Harry seemed like a normal boy until around age 10, when his FOP started to manifest. He lived a life watching his own body betray him, hardening with every passing year. By the time he died at 39, he was almost completely encased in bone, able to move a little more than his lips. But Harry's incredible legacy lives on. He dedicated his skeleton to the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. So if you are from around, go for a little visit. His skeleton stands as a silent, powerful testament to his struggle and continues to teach doctors and scientists about this heartbreaking condition. It's a stark reminder of how fragile our bodies can be. Our next paradox flips reality in its head, or rather, on the head of the person experiencing it. Have you ever felt so low, so despondent, that you just wanted to disappear? Now, imagine truly believing you have disappeared. This is walking corpse syndrome, also known as Cotard's delusion. It's a very rare mental disorder where individuals genuinely believe they are missing body parts, have lost their blood or soul, or most chillingly, that they are literally dead. One of the earliest documented cases is from the 1880s. A woman known as Mademoiselle X. She was convinced she had no brain, no nerves, no chest, and no stomach. She refused to eat, reasoning that since she was condemned to eternal damnation, she couldn't die a natural death and therefore didn't need sustenance. Tragically, she starved to death. More recently, in 1996, a Scotsman, let's call him Jim for privacy, developed Cotards after a severe motorcycle accident. He became convinced he was dead and had gone to hell. He even thought the hospital was purgatory. Imagine trying to convince someone they are alive when every fiber of their being tells them they are a corpse. It's a profound detachment from reality. Coming up next is a case that sounds like a plot from a comedy movie, I guess. But for those who suffer from it, it's anything but funny. What if your own body could get you drunk without you ever touching a drop of alcohol? Here enters Auto-Brewery Syndrome, or ABS. This is where an overgrowth of yeast in your gut, the carbohydrates you eat, turning them into ethanol, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, an alcohol, which then gets absorbed into your bloodstream. So you literally get drunk from eating bread. Imagine that. I like to get tipsy sometimes, but being constantly hammered? Nah. Consider the incredibly frustrating case of the Illinois man, reported in 2015. This 60-year-old had been a recovering alcoholic for decades, yet for 4 years, he kept having spells where he felt drunk or hungover. He was even stopped by police and ended up in the ER with a blood alcohol content of 0.17%, well over the legal limit. Despite swearing he hadn't had a drink, doctors finally discovered he had a massive colony of brewer's yeast in his intestines. Every time he ate carbs, his gut essentially brewed beer. His story highlights not only the bizarre science, but also the social stigma and disbelief that patients with ABS face. Imagine trying to explain that to a police officer. All right, let's talk about something that changes not just how you feel, but how you sound. Have you ever heard someone with a truly unique accent and wondered where it came from? Now, imagine that unique accent coming from you overnight after a brain surgery. This is foreign accent syndrome, FAS, a rare speech disorder where your brain damage causes a person to suddenly speak with what sounds like a completely new, often foreign accent. One of the most historically poignant cases of that is Astrid L. from Norway in 1941. After suffering a head injury from shrapnel during a World War II air raid, Astrid's speech changed dramatically. To her community, she suddenly sounded like she had a German accent. In wartime Norway, this was catastrophic. She was tragically shunned and ostracized, believed to be a German collaborator, all because of her brain injury. Fast forward to Lisa, a Lamia in Texas in 2016. After extensive jaw surgery, she woke up speaking with what sounded like a distinct British accent. She'd never lived in the UK, had no connection to it. Imagine losing your own voice, your own identity in that way and having to explain it constantly. Subconsciously, she must have always been a fan of Great Britain. And finally, we journey into a world where reality itself warps and bends, inspired by one of the most famous pieces of literature ever written. Our last condition is Alice in the Wonderland Syndrome, or AIWS. This neurological condition profoundly affects a person's perception of size and shape. Objects, people, or even parts of their own body can appear much larger or much smaller than they actually are. The world shrinks, swells, or stretches. While former diagnoses didn't exist until much later, the most famous sufferer, or at least the one who most vividly described its symptoms, was likely Charles Ludwig Dodgson, better known as Lewis Carroll, the author of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. It's widely believed that Carroll suffered from AIWS as part of his severe migraines. Think of Alice shrinking after drinking from the bottle, or growing to an enormous size after eating the cake, or the constantly changing size of her neck. These aren't just whimsical, literally devices. They are thought to be direct reflections of Carroll's own perceptual distortions, and I didn't know that until I started doing research for this episode. Imagine looking at your hand and seeing it the size of a giant, or seeing your friend's face suddenly shrink to a tiny speck. It's a disorienting, often frightening trip down the rabbit hole of your own mind. What you think about this? Let me know in the comments. Phew. We've covered some truly mind-bending medical mysteries today, from the solidifying body of Harry Eastlack to the perceived death of Mademoiselle X, the internal brewery of the Illinois man, the bewildering new accent of Astrid L and Lisa Alamia, and the warped realities of Alice in the Wonderland Syndrome, inspired by Lewis Carroll. Now, before we wrap up, let's assume the below scenario. Okay, ready? Imagine a 14-year-old sister and 16-year-old brother. Brother is sick, in a wheelchair, with rare sickness, won't last until his mid-20s. The sister is in sports, young, healthy teenager, but suddenly gets sick. Sickle cell variant disease, which starts to spread, shutting down kidneys, lungs. There's no time, but the doctors give the parents an impossible choice. Give her daughters their son's bone marrow and transplant part of his lung, as the donor's lung failed at first attempt. The catch is that their son's lifespan is going to get even shorter. Never mind the parents, they need to make a decision, and it's obviously a devastating one. I would not wish this onto my worst enemy. But what would you do in that situation as a doctor? Didn't care? Been deeply moved? Feel sorry for the patient and her family? To me, those life and death situations, a lot of doctors or surgeons face are impossible to wrap my head around. Let me know in the comments what you think and what would you feel as a doctor in that kind of situation. On another news, and this is a fresh one directly from the medical tech world, and it's changing the future of cancer treatment without a single incision. Liverpool Hospital has just introduced a breakthrough technology called MRI guided cryoablation, minimally invasive procedure that freezes tumors from the inside out. How about that? Using a gas-powered needle, doctors create an ice ball that destroys the tumor with pinpoint accuracy, all while watching the entire process in real time through MRI imaging. Patients often go home the same day. No major surgery, less pain, faster recovery. A new hope for those with tumors that are too risky or difficult to remove in a traditional way, especially in areas like the spine or pelvis. A quiet revolution, but one that could change thousands of lives. Each of these cases I described to you in its own unique way underscopes just how delicate and intricate our bodies and minds are. They remind us that what we consider normal is a complex symphony of biological processes, and when even one note is out of tune, the results can be profoundly surreal. It just points to the fact that no matter how advanced and great we think we are as human species, we are only a tiny little grains living on a tiny little planet hanging in a vast, huge, dark cosmos, and our brains are still a mystery to us. These stories aren't just fascinating, they are the paradox of life and death, the paradox of unpredictability and chaos, a paradox of humanity. These stories foster empathy and a deeper appreciation for the incredible work of medical professionals who strive to understand and treat such rare conditions. Those people out there who sacrifice their time, will, and life to become doctors and study our bodies and minds to be able to understand the deep-seated mysteries within, help and cure, obviously. They also highlight the incredible resilience of the human spirit in the face of such extraordinary challenges. The oncologists who are somewhat empathetic and need to bring a bad news to a young woman who was diagnosed with terminal cancer. It is a tough job which requires a lot of resilience and commitment and also empathy. And I know some of you is going to say that they get paid enough, right? But yeah, I think we don't appreciate them enough. So on that note, thank you to all the doctors, nurses, for constantly helping others and literally saving lives. What do you think about these cases? Have you ever heard of any other ones? Let us know in the comments or go to my TikTok page, link in the main page of my podcast here on YouTube. That's all the time we have for this episode of Paradox Experience. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the bizarre and brilliant world of medical paradoxes. I'm Pat, and I'll catch you next time for more stories that make you question everything. See you later.